The Media Dialogues, Vision 2020.
India has had the longest and easily the harshest lockdown anywhere in the world to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic. The last 3 months have been marked by fear, restrictions, scarcity, pay cuts, job losses, and the unending misery of our workers. What shape the economic recovery will take and how the consumption story will restart is not clear yet. So what function does advertising perform at a time like this? So how does advertising create desires that stimulate demand? What language will it speak after the lockdown is lifted? I'm going to put these questions and more to one of the most thoughtful people in the business. That's Agnello Dias, creative chairman of the Denso Aegis network in India. Now, this network has 25 specialist units and employs some 3,500 people across the country. Taproot Denso, that's one of the agencies in the network, counts Airtel and Facebook, among others, as the brands it consults. Aggie, thank you so much for joining us. It is good to see you. It's been a while.
Hi, Anuradha. Good to see you from a distance, virtually. Doing okay.
Doing okay. What have the last 3 months been like, Aggie, given that this pandemic has taken a wrecking ball to the world and to the systems and life processes as we know it? What have the last 3 months been like for your work?
There is a large part of the business that does not involve physical proximity with new people. Thinking, strategy, discussion, negotiation, thinking again, reworking, all of that may not be happening 100%, but is definitely happening about 75 to 70%. The part that is completely stopped, which is unfortunately a critical part in the workflow, is the execution of ads, which is either shooting something or going out and making a commercial or something. So if that part's blocked, eventually everybody reaches up to that point and stops. And some of us who are brave enough or needy enough or desperate enough have actually gone and made films that are directed, so to say, by remote, shot by the actors themselves in their own house of an iPhone. And there is a novelty to the process that delights everyone. But once that novelty wears out, consumers are not looking at the degree of difficulty with which you shot the commercial. They're just looking at the commercial as a regular commercial and comparing it with what we had. And it's not an ideal way. Even though a lot of industry pundits have claimed, oh, it's so easy to work out a phone, it actually makes no difference at all. It makes a big difference.
What kind of a world do you see the post-lockdown world being? Do you see the emotional, social landscape a changed one, or will it be back to business as usual?
It won't be back to business as usual. There will be a consciousness about the culture of excess that possibly the whole world, not just the advertising industry, had gotten into. Advertising is a player in that culture. Advertising is a player in any culture. So the awareness and the consciousness of us having long entered a culture of excess in anything that we do, like, feel, want, that I think will prevail for some time at least till this thing is worn off for many years.
I find it very interesting what you've just said, because it means that then your function or the function of advertising becomes that much harder, because this economy, and everybody has said so, needs the consumption story to really not just start but sort of open up the floodgates, to open up on that front for this economy to not just survive but then go on, stabilize and then thrive. And if you're saying that you sense that the emotional, psychological landscape of the consumer is going to be one of restraint, what is the challenge before advertising?
So this landscape is not in humanity for the first time. It's been there in the past after the Great Depression and all that. About the actual discipline that I'm involved in, that will have to undergo a change, because there is a difference between the school of thought that we were molded in and grew up learning about creativity and advertising and all that, and the way it is today. Our school of creativity, at least the school of thought that we were brought up in, it was all about persuasion. Even if you're not thinking about my category, my product or my brand, I can, through a creative idea or execution, invoke desire that will pull you into this mind state. I can make you want a better house, even if it's not a I can make you want an appliance that improves your life, even if it's not on your mind. So that's what it was. But today, I think the thinking is that if you can find the right mind space at the right place at the right time, you don't need persuasive powers. You just need to inform. You just need to communicate because you're already thinking about your brand. You're already thinking about your product. It's just that you couldn't find them earlier. Now you can find them. So now you don't need to persuade them. You just need to find them and tell them. And that essentially has changed the fundamentals in which creative people think.
Aggie, this is quite fascinating. I just want to pause there because I want to just explore that before you elaborate. Now, the thing is that if you're saying this has changed, now this is not because of COVID-19 and these 3 months. COVID-19 and these 3 months have probably just hastened or, hastened this process or galvanized it. This is something that has already begun, isn't it?
I think it was led largely by the digital revolution. And the digital tool was able to fine tune and access not only people in their physical state, but people in their mind state. So all the creative powers that the old school brought to the table of pulling people into your mind state, I don't need them. I'll just find the right people who are already there and I'll inform them. So the idea right now is to find a target audience, and that's where all the creativity is. And a target audience means somebody who is in the mind space, in the physical space, and at the time of his life when he's most amenable to your message. So that's where the creative ability is, to find them. After you find them, you just tell them. You just be present and say, here it is. Whereas earlier, because we couldn't find them, there was no tool to find them. We would say we would create them, and that's what the creative process was, to find a piece of music, find poetry, acting, writing, visualization that evoked a desire. Now you don't need that. In fact, that can come out of an algorithm. Now the entire effort is to find people who are already there, and the claim, at least in the new world, is that they can find them and they have evidence to prove it.
So does that mean that the joy and magic of the advertising creative process has lessened or has gone out or completely? That's the first question. And the second question is, does it mean that somebody who's starting out in the business today, as opposed to someone like you, will have a different set of skills that they bring to what is known as advertising?
I think that's absolutely true. I wouldn't call it the joy. It would be the joy from my point of view. It is not the joy from the current creative processes point of view. For them, the joy is in what they are doing now. But from my point of view, or others of my ilk, that joy has gone out, where we went and set off. The brief was a trigger to go off on an exploratory journey. Whereas today, the brief is to identify a target and attack it. So the whole idea where the crafts came in, that keep reading up on literature, watch movies, all the film festivals are full of advertising people, that may no longer be necessary. So earlier it started out maybe in the 70s and 60s before I started, when you just had to be only creative. So agencies were full of poets, and I worked with Arun Kolatkar and all that, who today is unthinkable in an advertising agency. Then it moved to being creative and clever and intelligent in the 90s. And now it's moved practically to being really sharp and intelligent and clever rather than creative. And you can see that in the younger supply chain that's coming into creative, where they're all very highly educated. They're all IITs and they're all IIMs and PhDs, because intelligence has taken great precedence and a great lead over creative exploration or lateral kind of mindsets that earlier saw a whole bunch of eclectic backgrounds landing up in that place.
Can you illustrate how things have changed in the way you would make a commercial today and the way you need to think about it, because digital is front and center?
It's fairly self-evident in most of the training or the lessons we got as youngsters, whereas what a large number of the digital platforms communicate to us is working on digital. Whereas we were told to go out and meet people on the street, actually walk to a shop and sit with people, understand what they think. This was generally, by and large, the must-do list for any young copywriter when I started. Whereas today, and the the holy Bibles of the whole digital platform world, which is the big players there, whenever they conduct a workshop for what works on creative, invariably one of the key lessons is that your brand name should appear in the first 5 seconds, your product promise should appear in the first 8 seconds, probably your tagline in the first 10 seconds. So it's all about putting it out there quickly, fast, and accurately rather than draw people in and convince them and persuade them. So
Yeah.
speed and agility is a new creative, not lateral thinking.
Right. And I think also, therefore, the memorability of a lot of these ideas or these campaigns are on the wane, isn't it? You can't remember jingles, you can't remember ads as much as you could at one point. Also because of fragmentation of media, I do grant that, but it's also because of this approach to advertising. Am I right?
Yeah, but yes, you're right. But if I were to argue for them, why should our campaigns be remembered? They should be remembered only if you don't have another campaign next year. Then I do a campaign that will be remembered for 5 years. But I'm going to do a new campaign every year. Why
Sure.
should I be making a campaign that has to be remembered? It's like buying, cheap footwear, cheap clothes. You don't want it to last that long.
You don't want it to be remembered, but then how do you build iconic brands if you don't have communication from them that allows you to perceive them in a certain way, isn't it?
Yeah, but the new world order is not iconic brands. The new world orders constantly build new brands.
What are brands? What are businesses saying? What are your clients saying?
Clients see it's such a slow churn in a large market like India that the churn period itself is an entire generation. So
Right.
clients do often feel the need for good, powerful, desire-invoking creativity, and they continue to hold that halo around traditional creative processes compared to, say, the digital surge. But they also acknowledge, and everybody acknowledges, that you can't now do without digital. How to marry it best with what was, uh, it's that's the challenge. It's like the typical Indian way of finding the perfect wife.
What happens when lockdown lifts? And you have alluded to it a couple of times now in this conversation about the kind of mental landscape or the emotional landscape of the consumers.
There will be a lot of short-term work that immediately produces results next week or next month, rather than classic brand building that produces much larger results than this week or next month, but produce it after a year. So in the short term, as we take baby steps before everybody starts running again, there will be a lot of direct sales promotional kind of work. To start to build a brand, people would be worried because there's less clarity about the future of the world as far as environment and health goes. And I think capitalism itself is needs to reinvent itself as a model for this. So when we go back, we hear all the pundits from the rooftop saying the government has to create desire, and everybody saying we have to create need and want for the market. We have to create demand. Now, for some time, we built a model that existed, that was worked on the fact that demand is already there, desire is already there. We just have to find the right people, like you said. In this scenario where we have to create demand and create desire, there may be a throwback or a calling back of the traditional skills when we make people feel optimistic about life. And making them feel optimistic does not mean inspirational message that says we can fight back and all that, because that is only make them to keep reminding them of the current situation. But the whole world where you wanted to smell like a better person because you use a particular soap, you wanted your family to be a happy family because there's a washing machine in the house and people have more time to be in the family. That world of don't worry about tomorrow, if you take a bet on this product or service today, tomorrow will take care of itself, will have to be rebuilt. So there may be a demand for traditional desire creating creative skills again.
So that is something that you feel positive about, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel, because otherwise, with all the sops and all the financial banded band-aid kind of thing that we're doing,
Sure.
it's packaging everything else, but it's not generating demand. That's what corporate industry is saying. That's what analysts are saying. Unless we generate demand, you know, uh, treating all this other thing is not going to work. And to generate demand, people have to feel optimistic. People feel optimistic if they feel that tomorrow will be fine. I won't be on the roads, or I won't be saddled with a huge EMI that I can't pay. Right now, people are not worried about the money they have now. They do have money. They are worried that they may not have it tomorrow. So don't spend it now.
Give us a sense of what kind of systemic changes Denso Aegis as a network will have to see.
I think they will have to see far stronger and more common collaboration between the agency brands within the network. Earlier, there was so much business around that everybody was chasing their own piece of business, and that fulfilled your 24 hours in a day, and you couldn't do more. But now there will have to be a greater sense of collaboration among agencies, and what traditionally all networks have promised over the years, which is we work together as one single unit and one single unit that works together, will now have to be proven more often in practice, rather than what it was, which was, occasionally there was a strong collaboration, but there was so much work individually for each of the companies that there was really no time or space for actually doing this. But now that may become a very real possibility because of a very real need.
What can you tell us about how Denso Aegis as a network is managing when it comes to people and holding on to people?
One of the things that I've noticed is slightly different in the Denso Aegis network is they take decisions quickly and very early. Whereas quite a few other people may tend to overanalyze, and it's no coincidence that it can become so bad that it just gets restricted to the first four words, which is A and AL. But they tend to leave the decision too late. And in Denso, they are decisive faster and quicker. And I think that whether you live with that decision and try and make it work, I think that's a good natural strategy that they have. So a lot of decisions structurally, which maybe I'm not the best place to put out right now because I look largely at the creative. Maybe Ashish or somebody can do it for you. But they did it earlier than most. And I used to see it around, still being discussed and still happening with somebody else. But that's good. They're decisive and they're fast.
You're saying that because of this strategy that Denso Aegis has had of dealing with keeping costs under control over a period of time, that things may be better at Denso Aegis today than in other places. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I don't see, at least as of now, there's no bloodbath or no even indication of a slight bleed. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but so far it's been more a case of quickly doing certain things that ensure that we don't reach a stage where we have to take a decision about a bloodbath. So it seems like it will be better than other places in that precise respect.
Give us a closing thought of how you're looking forward to life after lockdown. Will it change, the culture of advertising agencies, festivals, awards, clients, pitches? Do you see anything there change?
Well, the award ecosystem was already under scrutiny even before this started. There was a lot of conversation and a lot of discussion about whether it suddenly become a culture of excess as far as awards go as well. It was hard to find an individual or an agency in India that's not won, a Cannes Gold or even a Grand Prix for that matter. So yes, all that should undergo change, if not change, at least scrutiny. If not scrutiny, at least debate, because advertising is a key player in the decision of whether any social consumption culture overspills and becomes a social culture of excess. It's a key player in that game, and therefore it needs to revisit its own soul.
So time to revisit, time to reflect. I'm guessing all of that has been started or galvanized even because of what we are enduring. Aggie, thank you for joining us. I wish you all good luck.
Thank you, Anurag.
Thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for another conversation on the Media Dialogues right here on CNBC TV 18.
The Media Dialogues. Vision 2020.